Audiobooks and beyond.
The Inheritors, narrated by Robert Wilson. The move was supposed to be a fresh start. Mark and Sarah, with their two young children, Lily and Ethan, had traded the cramped, grayscale apartment of city life for the sprawling, quiet solace of a house in the suburbs. It was an old place, a grand Victorian with a porch swing and a massive oak tree in the front yard, a tree that seemed to hold all the stories of the world in its gnarled, ancient branches. On the first day, a Friday in late August, the house was a chaos of cardboard boxes and echoing footsteps. The air was thick with the scent of sawdust and old paper. The kids ran through the empty rooms, their laughter bouncing off the hardwood floors. Mark, unpacking the kitchen, felt a chill crawl up his spine. It wasn't the temperature. The house was warm, almost humid. He turned to find the source and saw it. A spider, the size of his palm, sitting motionless in the center of the pantry doorway. It was a bizarre, mottled gray, with legs like twisted pieces of metal. It wasn't scurrying away. It was simply watching him. Its stillness was unsettling. "Huh," Mark muttered, his brow furrowed. He picked up a broom and with a quick, reflexive whack, ended its vigil. The spider crumpled to a dark, pulpy stain on the floor. Mark swept it up without a second thought. Just an old house problem, he told himself. The next few days were a blur of unpacking. He and Sarah were too busy to notice the subtle changes. A small, dark spider in the corner of the guest bedroom. A slender one dangling from the chandelier in the dining room. They were small, easy to miss. The kids noticed them first.
Daddy, there's a spider on the window.
Mark saw a tiny black dot scurrying across the glass. He sighed, grabbed a paper towel, and pinched it dead. "Got it, sweetie. Don't worry." The next day, Ethan found one in his closet, and Sarah screamed when a plump one scurried across the bathroom floor while she was brushing her teeth. Mark was getting annoyed. The old house charm was wearing thin. By the end of the first week, the spiders were no longer a handful. They were a presence. They were everywhere. He'd find them clinging to the lampshades, crawling on the kitchen counters, and sometimes, he swore, on his pillow. He and Sarah began a nightly routine of spider patrol. They'd move through the house with a vacuum cleaner and a can of bug spray, sucking up dozens of them. They came in all shapes and sizes, from tiny, almost invisible specks to the larger, darker ones that made Sarah gasp.
"This is not normal, Mark."
They stood in the hallway, the low hum of the vacuum cleaner the only sound.
"I think we need to call someone."
Mark, his face grim, nodded. He was already feeling a low-level dread that had nothing to do with a fear of spiders. He was beginning to realize that the spiders were not just an infestation, they were an omen. He finally called a pest control service. The exterminator, a man named Gary with a tired mustache and weary eyes, arrived 2 days later. He walked through the house, his eyes scanning the walls, his flashlight tracing lines of cobwebs in the corners of the ceilings.
"Yep, got a bad case here. Looks like they've been here a while. We'll get 'em. I'll spray the whole house. Foundation, baseboards, crawl space. We'll make this place a fortress."
The family stayed at a hotel for the night while Gary worked. When they returned the next morning, the air was still and chemical-scented. Gary had done a thorough job. The house felt clean, sterilized, and for the first time in days, Mark felt a sense of peace. He promised the kids they'd have a movie night with popcorn to celebrate. But the peace didn't last. That evening, Mark went to get a bowl for the popcorn. When he opened the cupboard, he saw them. A dozen spiders, of varying sizes, were clustered in the back corner. They weren't dead, they were moving. He slammed the door shut, his heart pounding. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice catching in his throat. She came into the kitchen, her face pale. He opened the cupboard door again. More spiders were there now, spilling out onto the shelves. They weren't scurrying randomly. They were moving with a strange, purposeful crawl. They formed a tiny living river that flowed from the back of the cupboard, heading toward him. He called Gary the exterminator, his voice trembling. "They're back! They're everywhere!"
That's impossible. My spray is the strongest on the market. It should take a week to see them again, even if there's a new batch. They should be dead.
They're not dead, Gary. They're more. Over the next 24 hours, the invasion became an avalanche. The spiders came out of the walls, from under the floorboards, through the tiniest cracks in the windows. It was no longer a matter of catching them. It was a matter of retreat. The family barricaded themselves in the living room, but the spiders were already there. They crawled on the ceiling, a moving dark mosaic. They streamed down the walls, a silent, flowing mass. The children began to cry, and Mark and Sarah were paralyzed with a terror that went beyond arachnophobia. And that's when Mark noticed something profoundly wrong. The spiders were not just swarming. They were all moving in the same direction, with the same strange, deliberate pace. They were all moving toward him. A large, black one crawled down the wall, stopped directly above his head, and dangled there, motionless. A moment later, another one dropped onto his shoulder, then another. He felt the cold, light weight of their legs on his skin. He didn't swat them away. He couldn't. He was frozen, a living statue in a sea of crawling darkness.
Mark, get them off you.
He looked down at his hands, and they were covered. The spiders weren't biting him. They were just crawling on him, a living, furry glove. They formed a moving shield on his chest and arms, a tapestry of segmented bodies. He looked at the floor and saw the final horrifying puzzle piece. The spiders were not coming for them, they were coming to him. They formed a line around him, an outer ring of sentinels that separated him from his family. They weren't a threat, they were a protective detail. The small, silent ones lined up against the wall, a living barrier. The larger ones crawled over him, a bizarre organic armor. He remembered the large gray spider he had killed on the first day. He had felt no guilt, no remorse. It was just a pest. But now, as he stood there, a bizarre living monument to his own hubris, he realized the terrible truth. The first spider wasn't just another spider. It was the mind, the queen, the one that gave the orders. And he, Mark, the accidental killer, had left them with no one to lead them. And so, the collective, with no other recourse, had found a new leader. They had chosen him. They were not trying to harm him. They were simply doing what a hive does without a queen. They were searching for a new one. They were protecting him now, not just from the outside world, but from his own family, from anyone who might try to harm their new king. The horror wasn't in being hunted, it was in being chosen. He was the center of a new, terrible world, and he could feel their silent, telepathic hunger for his command. He looked at Sarah and the kids, their faces etched with fear, and knew he could never escape. He was their new master, their living god, and they would stay with him forever, waiting for the one word that would make them move, or, more terrifyingly, for the moment he died, and they would swarm off to find a new inheritor for their unspeakable throne. The house, he realized, was not their home, it was his prison.